What's up, everybody? Coach Rob here, and you're going to like this one. I've got an awesome interview lined up that I recorded just last week with the Dan Skidmore. And some people know him as Cadre Dan Skidmore. Some people know him as Cadre Dan. Some people know him as Cadre DS, depending on what social media platform you're on or if you've been around the GORUCK tribe for a while. He is the director of training for GORUCK. And if you don't know who GORUCK is, then you haven't been paying attention. They simply make the best rucksacks, training apparel, home workout equipment like sandbags and sandbag kettlebells. It's just a phenomenal company. But the other half of what GORUCK does is they offer these really badass events. And many would say they're the most challenging, or can be the most challenging civilian events out there as far as fitness challenges go. So one of the evil scientists behind the GORUCK training arm of their company is Dan Skidmore. And rucking is something I've been doing the last few years. It's part of my almost daily training these days. And it's one of the things I look forward to doing the most because it's just badass and it challenges you and it allows you to add a cool strength element to your cardiovascular conditioning work. So this interview was surprisingly badass. It went down so many different roads once we got going. And I can tell you, you want to get through this entire interview because it got cooler as we went. I discovered some things about him that I didn't even know, where we line up on so many different things. It was just such a cool discussion. And it is very just laid back, honest, and just refreshing. So, without further ado, I want to get right to it. But before we do, please help me out. We've had more returning visitors and viewers to this channel in the last couple of episodes than we've ever had, and many of you are not subscribers. And if you like any of this content, it would really, 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 really help this channel and what I do go a long way to push this information to other like-minded people out there. So please, please, do me the honor and privilege of hitting that subscribe button, hitting that notification bell, and leave a comment if you like. All of those things go a long way to help push the channel, and it really helps me out. So thank you in advance. So anyway, without wasting any more of your valuable time, sit back, relax, light up a cigar, and enjoy the interview that I had with Cadre Dan Skidmore. All right, everybody, I kind of gave you a heads up and warned you. I've got a very special guest today, one I'm really excited about. And if you've been paying any damn attention at all in the last several months, or even the last year or so, you know I've become a big fan of rucking and kicking my own ass. Now that I've veered away from competitive bodybuilding, I'm trying to be more of a complete athlete. And as I like to say, I'm building more of an apocalypse body than a competition body these days. And a guy that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, that I've followed online for some time. I've even tried some of his programming. And even today, you'll want to know this, Dan, I made sure that I absolutely killed myself because I wanted to feel worthy of interviewing you today. So if I'm a little shaky from the workout, and I plan on going on a long ruck this evening. But anyway, people, I want to welcome Dan Skidmore, also known out in the interwebs as Cadre Dan or Cadre DS. And man, we are just thrilled to have you. And I know there's going to be a huge segment of my audience are going to be thrilled that you're here. So thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me on. Pretty stoked. When you hit me up, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about all things badassery and
badassery.
Get to know you as well.
Hell yeah, man. And I'm excited. And I'm going to put all your links in the show notes. I think everybody should check out your YouTube channel. If you are into just some badass workouts, but you want to do it right, you want to make sure the technique is on point, the form is on point. I can tell you from a guy that's been coaching for 30 years, Dan is the man. And I'm going to let you go ahead and sort of give all of my listeners and viewers your bio. So I know a lot about you just from spying on you on the internet, how creepy that is. But why don't you tell all the viewers and listeners a little bit about you?
All right. So I grew up in a small town, Athens, Ohio, foothills in Appalachian, played sports, didn't really know what I was going to do after high school. Knew that I didn't want to waste a bunch of money, chasing girl. Well, I don't know that wasting money is chasing girls, but
So
didn't
that's a good
necessarily need to go
investment,
the
isn't it?
college route.
Yeah,
Man, I had a Harley years ago, and I had a sticker that said I spent all my money on booze and broads, and the rest I wasted, or something like that.
I
And
like it.
anyways, yeah, the younger Dan, right?
Right.
Well, anyway, so I enlisted into the Air Force at 18. Got into Air Force Special Operations. Basically, you get your foot in the door. You got to try out to be, a special tactics operator. And when I went into the recruiter, I said, "Hey, what's the hardest thing you got?" And he said, "Well, can you swim?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" And so that kind of puts you in the door. You either break people or you fix people, and as a pararescue or a combat controller. And my dad was so he's got a PhD in electrical engineering, worked on avionics research, and so we were much more into like the air traffic control piece. A lot of his buddies served in the Marine Corps and in the Air Force, in the Air Force, working on, planes, trains, automobiles, satellites. And so being an air traffic controller sounded more appealing to me. That's the route that I chose. I was in the Air Force for 9 years, from 2006 to 2015. In that time, I had a really diverse set of experiences, hit a bunch of good deployments. Happy to answer any questions about that you got, within keeping it under TS SCI clearance. And man, I had a great time. I regret nothing, and learned a lot. Had a really cool experience overall. At the same time, I got into competitive exercising. So, CrossFit was really getting huge. And so the first year of the CrossFit Open, I believe, was 2011. And that kind of came in right as I was getting into that fitness, really being fitness minded, right around my first couple deployments. And as you know, you got a lot of time while you're out in the field to get after it and to hone your machine. And so that kind of like coincided with CrossFit as we went. And I got out in 2015 and started doing GORUCK stuff in 2017. So, man, these are like wave tops, right? And there's a lot of other stuff, but I got out of the military in 2015 to really focus more on the entrepreneurial side of life, and to be around, as opposed to be around for the family, as opposed to be gone all the time.
Right.
So that was the big why there.
Outstanding. Now, where were you deployed? Where did you've sort of been around the world a little bit, right?
Yeah, so I hit 2 trips to Afghanistan, 2 to Iraq, went down to Haiti and ran all the air traffic control with a small team down there after that earthquake in 2010. And that was an amazing experience as well. And then I came out to Africa, hit a couple less than desirable spots out here, and then and hit a couple other small stays over the course. And now I'm back. I'm actually broadcasting live from Marrakesh, Morocco, Africa, where I live now.
What made you land in Morocco? Because that was one of the first things I wanted to ask you when I saw where you were, and I see the videos of you being there. How did you end up there?
Well, it all starts with a beautiful girl, right? My
It's
my
every
bond
story.
girl. Yeah, so I actually met the love of my life, my bond girl, out in and we were on a mission top secret, destination unknown, right? And it turns out she was Moroccan, and the rest is history. So we actually we were in North Carolina, and we needed a vacation, so we are like, hey, let's go check this out. And we vacationed out here. I absolutely loved it, and we were kind of ready for a move from North Carolina. I'd lived there from getting stationed there. After I transitioned out, I stayed there. And while you're still in the military, you're gone a lot, so you don't necessarily realize how bad brag sucks, because you're TDY like 300 days out of the year. Well, when I got out, I was like, oh my gosh, you can only handle so much of that. So, after a couple of years, we were ready for a transition. And like you, I was a CrossFit gym owner, and I had the opportunity to sell my gym and work on another project while maintaining the ownership of the building. So that's been an interesting story in and of itself in the entrepreneurial world. But it's very tough to work on the business if you're always working in the business.
Right.
And so when I relinquished control of the gym, I was able to work on another big project, and that's what led us out to Morocco.
So what are you now? I know you're the director of training for GORUCK, and I definitely want to spend some
Mhm.
time there. So what are you doing in addition to, creating much badassery for the GORUCK crowd? What are you doing in addition to that?
So I've got a boutique. Well, my wife and I have a boutique hotel in Marrakesh. So it's in the ancient Medina. It's in an area that's designated as a UNESCO heritage site, and it's like it's like you walk down the streets of Aladdin. It's very foreign, and I always tell people it's a mix between like Afghanistan, Iraq, and California and Arizona. It's safe. You get to have the culture. It's super cool. It's very affordable. And so one of our goals was opening up this entire region and this culture to people that might not necessarily venture out into that world. And it's been a really cool experience so far.
So I've got a vacation spot now, is what you're telling me.
You got a safe house.
Got a safe house. I like that. So,
There you
so
go.
when I decide to get the hell out of North Carolina, I have a place to go now.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And that was that's part of it. So and besides the GORUCK stuff, we've continued that, and in the age of the digital nomad, I've been able to establish that along with a really kick-ass team at GORUCK. We've built a really cool training platform, and continued the mission there, which is positively influence people's lives through training and fitness and doing hard things. So that's the other side that we've continued to build. And I travel pretty frequently back and forth to both run events and then also, continue the training platform there with GORUCK.
Outstanding. Okay, so perfect segue into GORUCK. When I was doing bodybuilding competition, I sort of felt the same way. I felt that intensity was key, and I've always been more of a high intensity guy, even with my strength training and hypertrophy driven training. And it was intensity first. And when you're competing, there is a cardio element in there, and traditional cardio just bored the shit out of me. And I stumbled onto some people, out rucking with packs and vests, and so I started doing that in my competition prep, and I noticed some real advantages from that, and it really started to change me, and I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed having that strength element added to my cardiovascular training. And it didn't take long for me to stumble onto the GORUCK community and the GORUCK products, which I tell everybody is still the best shit on earth. And, I tell people just spend the money, buy the pack. You could drag that damn thing behind a truck for 2 weeks, strap it back on. It's going to be fine. But so the GORUCK thing really, really changed a lot of the way I look at training. And I'm rucking 4 or 5 days a week, and things I never thought I'd be doing. But how did you make that segue into the GORUCK community? And how did you evolve through that and ultimately get to where you are now, actually directing all the training? Because as I'm sure you'll explain, GORUCK is kind of two things sort of meshed together. It's incredible products, and then it's that tribal community of athletes and coaches, and I think it's one of the coolest things out there. So tell us about your evolution into that and kind of where you are now with GORUCK.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it. The GORUCK onion. It has a lot of peels to it, a lot of layers. And so thank you for allowing me to kind of where I got into it. And there's a lot of unknowns as well, because a couple years ago there was even more unknowns. It was like this untalked about, like, you never know what you're going to get, and it's still semi like that. But as we can post more and share more of the mystique is removed. But anyways, so I was a competitive exerciser, was really loved competing in CrossFit, transitioned after I got out of the military. So I competed as an individual at regionals in 2011, 12, 13, and 14. And then in 15, I was in Iraq. So couldn't make the trip. Not a big deal, had better priorities. I also got out of the military that year and then transitioned to strongman, which is, just CrossFit for men. And I loved lifting heavy weights. At the same time, I still like doing the CrossFit thing. And so being a kind of a hybrid athlete, being able to move fast, but also pick up heavy shit. And I love powerlifting as well. That's like my staple. Well, then it came to a point where I hit a local competition with a friend, and we won it, and we won like $500. And I think that I was like, I came right back, and that immediately went to the electric bill, right? And I was like, this is kind of silly, and you can compete for days and like maybe get 20% off some shoes or like some swag, whatever. And then my buddy, I had a really good buddy that was out, just so happened to be a guy that I deployed with 3 times. And he was a member at my gym, and he started telling me about all these trips that he was taking. And like I said, like all of a sudden, being at Fort Bragg, I was missing all those TDYs that I had been taking in the military. And so I was like, hey, I want to start traveling again, right? I want to get out and get after it. And so this guy was telling me about these events that he was running, where he'd go, he'd show up, he'd put these civilians or military folks or anybody through these crazy challenges, and they come out stronger and better on the other side. And really, there's no script. There's no there's standards, right? There's clearly defined standards and things that we want to hit, and some safety protocols in line. But man, like it was up to him and up to me to decide how we run these things. And so as I kind of decided to transition away from competitive training and competing as a fitness thing, this walking and talking and challenging people, it was a really cool opportunity, and GORUCK provided that for me in a period where I really needed it. Fast forward about 3 years, I had been hitting events almost every weekend, as often as I could, traveling, because the events start on Friday night at 9 p.m. The first event typically ends at Saturday morning at 9 a.m. So you work through the night. Well, I would just travel Friday morning to whatever city the event is going on and crush it through the night, work the weekend, and then come back and continue the operations at the gym. Luckily, we had a badass staff that could manage and cover down on me. But it provided, both things. It provided fitness for myself and an avenue to continue giving back to the community, share some of my experiences, and also be consistently training all the time. And like no matter what, you're putting in a lot of cardio, whether I'm carrying 20 pounds, 40 pounds, 12 hours of cardio, that's walking through the night. Now, yeah. There is some drawbacks on the sleep side, which I'd be happy to get into in terms of like performance and recovery. But that's kind of the gist of how I got into it. And man, I started knocking out as many events as I could. Hey, if there's a random one, I don't care if it's Des Moines, Iowa, which is a badass spot, by the way, some great folks there, or Jefferson City, or Santa Cruz, California, man, send me, like I'll go and I can be there that day. And so it gave me a really good opportunity to travel and train and test people in ways that I hadn't necessarily done before.
Outstanding. Now, for the people that don't quite understand, they're like, what are we talking about here? Walk us through a GORUCK event. Now there's 3 basic challenges that you can jump into on the website. There's I guess it's the basic, the tough, and the heavy, correct?
So
walk us through for people who are unfamiliar, what are we talking about here?
Okay, so before we get into the events, just a definition of rucking, right? Moving out with intention and with at a good pace, right? This isn't running and under load. This is not running. This is not scrambling. But the events are a great opportunity to put a bag on your back, which in the military, you always got your gear, right? It's a toolbox for whatever you got to do. If you're carrying medical equipment, food, water, beans, bullets, maybe a laser designator so you can drop some bombs onto targets. Been there, right? So it's an opportunity for a special forces or special operations guy to lead a group of civilians to complete a mission, right? And that mission is always evolving and changing. And, it could be a rescue a downed pilot, or snatch and grab, or, a kill capture mission, which we've done plenty of those. And so we've got a bunch of different styles of events, some entry level, we've got a basic, a light. Those are like 4 to 6 hours of, lighthearted PT, just getting after it, getting familiar with rucking and kind of the environment. And then you've got a tough event, and it used to be called the challenge. So tough challenge. It's a 10 to 12 hour event where you're going to cover anywhere from 15 to 20 miles. Now, the mileage is just one thing, right? That's a sliding scale there. But there's a lot in 12 hours that you can do that it's not just rucking here, right? The spoiler alert, like you could be doing anything, and I've seen it go from anywhere from hours of 8 count bodybuilders to pool sessions to low crawling a mile or whatever the cadre wants the mission to be. That's what you're going to end up doing, and what you end up seeing is really cool challenges. Maybe it's move this pile of shit from this side of town to the other side of town, or move this telephone pole. But it forces the team to work together. Now, there have evolved to be the heavy events, which are a 24-hour event. And so, you really want to challenge yourself. That's an endurance event in and of itself. And then they stack these, right? So some of these, whoever thought it'd be a great idea to do a heavy, a tough, and a light back to back to back, that'll ruin your weekend and also make you a complete fucking badass. And then they've stacked on, we do some custom events, we do some survival events, we do tactical events, where there's shooting involved, all the way from a basic pistol and rifle course to personal security detail to long range marksmanship, and then like the survival side as well and land navigation. So there's a wide variety of events that we do, but all kind of go back to those basic, hey, you got to learn how to suck and carry your pack and problem solve with your team.
So you being involved with this, are you sort of the guy behind the scenes now that's in some ways directing what happens on some of these challenges, or are you more directly involved what's happening like on the training app and the other things that you can take advantage of to prepare yourself for these challenges or anything that might come at you in life? Where's your role fall into place there?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. So for years, I was just a cadre, right? So I would just run the events. And GORUCK has done a really good job of not micromanaging the cadre. All the guys are proven, highly decorated special operators, right? And so they can lead a group. They never come down and say, you must do this, right? So there's no backside thing. It's like, hey, there's some guidelines. And then, the cadre are a small group of guys that are like, yeah, this is the way we do things. And we all have our different styles. So my event might look different than a cadre cleave event. So there's no backside like, hey, management on that. There is some organizational stuff that we handle internally. But then my role has kind of always taken, in just the way that it's evolved, is I want to help train guys up so that they can be a better asset to their team, right? Because coming from like a performance, background, I find value in helping people get better and be a better asset to their team. So early in COVID time, I tried to do the whole podcast without mentioning the C word. Jason, the owner of GORUCK, he hit me up and was like, hey, we want to, all the events had stopped, right? There was a huge issue, it was like blackout for everything. And Jason McCarthy, mad genius as he is, he says, hey, DS, we wanted to do this app for a long time, make it happen. And so he tagged me with basically coming up with a sandbag and ruck only training program. So what can you do at your house by yourself or with a small group of people that with minimal equipment? Because, hey, all the gyms are closed and maybe you don't have a bunch of stuff. Well, easy. I can train an austere environment, move some weights around, do some gymnastics, put it in formats similar to CrossFit work, right? High intensity, constantly varied functional movements. That sounds pretty familiar, right? But we're just doing it with our equipment, and then adding rucking in there. So we designed an app where every day you log in and you get assigned a mission, right? This is your workout. Knock it out. If you've got time and energy left, hit some miles, do some rucking, right?
Nice.
But if you don't, you're going to get an awesome stimulus of good training where it's a great baseline, right? For an everyday general physical preparedness program. Now, on top of that, we've since evolved from that, and the app has changed slightly, and so that's continuing, right? We've got a bunch of weirdos that only want to train with a ruck and a sandbag, and don't necessarily, have the capacity for a barbell. Maybe they don't have access to it. Maybe they just don't have the skills for it yet. That's okay. We're building other programs to increase your strength, increase your stamina, so some other really cool side programs. And that's what I'm kind of heading up now, rather than like doing the daily training stuff. So now I've delved more into the specialized training.
Nice. So we've taken a deep dive into the events, which I think are super cool, and they are definitely in my future. Now let's sort of rewind, because I'm sure everybody, we've got their interest sparked now. And for those who haven't, taken the plunge into rucking, can we sort of simplify now? And can you sort of take us through Rucking 101, exactly again what it is? I know you touched on it a little bit, but let's expand on that a little bit. And then I think more importantly, people want to know, well, what's the benefit of me, putting bricks in a backpack or buying one of these packs? So nobody to better explain that than you. So sort of walk people through the benefits of rucking and why they should be interested in incorporating this in their training.
Sure. So rucking is really a verb, right? And it implies that you're moving out with intention and with a loadout, right? And that loadout should be your mission essential equipment. And humans, right? We're bipedal. We stand upright. We got strong backs. We can carry stuff in our hands, right? And from our early ancestors, I'm sure we were makeshift bags, throw it up over the shoulder and moving out. And so we're really designed really well to carry load, right? And from the very beginning, right, people are warring against each other. And so how do we move from one area to another? We walk there with all of our stuff, right? Think about the Spartans. You've got your shield, you got your sack of apples, right? You got your sword, you got your helmet. What else do you need, right? I have intention, and I've got my stuff, and I'm moving out. And so, you think about the evolution of the warrior, right? And the military guys from my generation, well, we got, 60, 75, 120 pounds of the most high-speed, lightweight gear that's going to get you to accomplish your mission, right? And so, it's just moving out. Walking is the primary objective, but think about it as like speed walking, right? Not just a walk in the park. However, that's very beneficial, and not necessarily running. Although, if bullets are flying or bears are chasing you, you got to be able to move out, right?
Yep.
But the whole rucking thing is, a good stride with something in mind, right? We have an objective, and that's going to keep you on task and moving out quickly, right? So there's a wide range there of speeds and loads, and I break it down into like the miles. I use acronyms for everything. So I've got this miles acronym. I actually haven't talked about this in weeks, so bear with me, right? So anytime we're rucking, we always have to break it down. M is mindset, I is intensity, L is load, right? E is environment, and then S is situation. And so you can break it down like militaristic style or programming style, and that sounds pretty familiar. Intensity, load, mindset. And so every training session can then have purpose behind it. That's our whole focus, right? Does that all make sense? Does that answer your question pretty well?
It makes perfect sense. I'm trying to figure out where I can go with this. So what I love about rucking is when I started introducing it to my clientele and the people that are within my social media space, Facebook groups, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, I fully expected the rucking thing to be the thing that my clients and people who follow me to be least attracted to. And to my surprise, and the whole damn reason you're here, is because it was one of the main things that people really gravitated towards and went out of their way to message me and say, hey, I'm doing the training, I'm doing the diet, I'm doing these, lifestyle modifications that you suggested, but the thing I'm really digging is this rucking thing. And I've got my partner on board, my husband, my wife. I've got videos that are coming in, being DM'd to me of mothers taking their young children out with weighted backpacks. And the other cool thing, and I want you to explain this as well, because coming from you, it might carry more weight. Um, I got a lot of benefit when I started rucking, just in terms of how I felt physically. I saw a great benefit from that in my overall performance, my structure, my strength, my mobility, my ability to move across spaces with, as you say, greater intention. What does somebody stand to gain specifically from adding that rucking element into their lifestyle?
Well, first thing first, it like you said, it can be fun, but it's also very hard and it's challenging. It kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're missing out on a lot. And so if that welcome change from being on the hamster wheel, right? The treadmill of death, where you're like, hey man, just looking at a wall or watching a TV screen, man, getting outside is huge.
Yep.
So there's a lot of factors here, whether it's removing yourself from the comfort of air conditioning and all these nice stimuluses and then getting outside. And then there's the social aspect of it where you can be outside, you can do this with friends, right? We can be talking, right? Where there's the cardio comes into effect. If I'm going too fast and I can't relay a good conversation or message to my team, maybe I'm out kicking my coverage there. And so I like that pace where you can maintain a good talk. So there's the social aspect of rucking where you can get together, you can go for a mileage and just get some cardio in, right? Get off the rower that you're trying to hit your, zone, whatever cardio at to burn all that fat, and get on your 2 feet, right? Nobody ever, well, okay, somebody probably did row into battle a really long time ago, but now it's like, hey man, if we need to walk up and over this mountain, like the rower's not really it's not gonna condition your feet, right? And you're really only as strong as your hands and your feet. We see this all the time in special forces assessment and selection training. Guys that their grip goes out, or they get huge blisters on their feet, or their toes fell apart, right? Like stupid little limiters like that hold people back. And so conditioning yourself to be outside, to walk with wet and feet is something that kind of, just short of getting in a good fight, like opens up another part in your brain to toughen you up. And we're really missing out on that as a culture and a society. And I think rucking brings it back a little bit.
Outstanding.
The other side of this whole thing is the weight training aspect of it. You've put a load on your spine, it's going to get stronger. And so you need to have a strong back in so many tasks, right? I think my buddy Chris McNamara, who was a operator with me, he owns a gym there in Aberdeen, right outside of Southern Pines, North Carolina, Evolution Athletics. And he dropped this on me one time. He said the number one predictor of kids putting their parents into a nursing home is the thoracic strength and mobility to turn and wipe their own ass, right?
Right.
And so if you lose that, then there's a high chance that you're going to have to go in some kind of assisted living, or change your life in areas that you don't necessarily want to. Well, rucking, putting a load on your back, staying upright, strengthening your back and spine and legs and everything at the same time prevents that, right? So an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Perfect. Let's get some steps in.
Outstanding. Yeah, I'm a broken record with my clients and the people that follow me, saying, I often say I have not been on an indoor cardio machine in 20 years. I'm outside doing my cardio, whether it's 6 degrees or 106 degrees, no matter what, because I enjoy that physical challenge. And when I was able to implement rucking, I just felt like I was taking it to another level of badassery, because who doesn't like to be a badass? And because of that physical challenge. And as we sort of morph into that conversation, we're talking about mindset. I tell people, motivation is bullshit. It wanes, especially when you start to get under duress. Motivation flies out the window, but it's about dedication. It's about drive. It's about determination. So can you talk a little bit? I want to know from a special operator, from somebody with your background, because I'm always talking about, so much of it is up here. When you're working with people who are grinding it out, pushing themselves to the brink, challenging themselves to do things that they otherwise never thought they would be able to accomplish, and they have these massive victories in their life going through these challenges that you're a part of, what would you say to somebody about the mental aspects of this, and how to push yourself and stay consistent and develop that drive to challenge yourself. I mean, just kind of riff on that. I mean, that's a really important thing in my life and with my clients. The prescription is easy. Laying out a program isn't that difficult, but it's getting somebody to follow through with that program and develop that consistency and keep driving themselves, especially in those moments when they're just not feeling it. I mean, I want your perspective from your background of how people can stay dedicated to the task.
Yeah. Take you back one notch. Are you familiar with Michael Easter?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so he'd be a great guy to have on. He just said something. He just posted something great blog, and his newsletter is phenomenal. It's like the 2%er, and he just put out this big thing about the benefits of working out outside. You know, just what it does for our eyes and getting outside in the elements. Huge benefits there, and so kudos to you. You know, I was just traveling in a hotel gym, and like always take the stairs, never take the elevator.
Yep.
Right, that's simple enough. But I do like the treadmill for walking backwards on the treadmill if in between sets of like something. But whatever, right? That's beside the point. Get outside, get after it, struggle against the elements. Now, the discipline thing, right? We got to put the discipline on where I'm gonna channel my inner Jocko here and maybe not try to copyright infringe on anything that he says. But man, like, hey, when you're just not feeling it, like you got to put the discipline on. And so that like dedication to your goal. Hey, if you say you want to be strong, if you say you want to be a better asset to the team, well, then prove it, right? How do you do that? You put in the work on a daily basis. And that's what I like about the GORUCK thing and events, right? And how I've kind of come into this training thing for guys that are looking to do events, because I wrote the whole Sandbag and Ruck training program for the eventual get everybody back together, right? If you're in isolation, what can you do to prepare yourself to be a better asset for the time, for the team, or when you get called into action, whether you're a singleton or you got a task where you got a bunch of buddies to work with, right? And so it's very important to me to be an asset to whatever team I'm on, whether it's my family team, you know, small team tactics, or a big team where it's like, hey, we got to move this tree across this mountain. Well, I got to show up and I got to bring my maximal strength. I got to bring my best self to the team. Now, all that work, it gets put in the shadows, right? Where nobody really cares about it. Maybe it'll end up on an Instagram story somewhere, but that's just to say, yep, I'm consistent, right? Like, and I use that, you know, I use my Instagram stories as like an accountability tool to myself of, yep, this is my training that I'm doing today. You're going to see a couple parts of it. Maybe a little glimpse, not everything, but I'm putting in the work. Are you? And so as I like talk to guys is, hey man, like you got to put in the work yourself. If you want to be on the team, if you want to bring your best self, you got to do what it takes. And a lot of times that's not the comfortable stuff.
Yep. 100%. So most people listening to this are nuts and bolts people. And, you know, they tune in to say, you know, how do you train? How do you coach? You know, tell us some stories about this. Tell us about the implementation in the trenches, real time, real programming. What does a typical training week look like to Dan Skidmore?
Okay, so the full evolution while I was an operator, the CrossFit model worked really well for me, right? Constantly varied, high intensity, functional movement, not random, right? But as chaotic as your life can be, as long as you're putting in the work and putting out and being smart about your recovery methods and the stuff that you're doing, there's a lot of positive that we can get there. Now, the evolution has, and as I was transitioning out, learning more and more, I'm a big conjugate guy, so I love the West Side Barbell methodology, take a lot of principles from that. Just had the opportunity to finally kind of put the, you know, so much you get experience before you get the certifications and the you know, the thing that says yes, you know what you're talking about. I had the opportunity to go up and train with the conjugate tactical guys this summer. And so yeah, highly recommend that for anybody that is interested in law enforcement, fighters, military guys, to structure your training program. So I like the West Side stuff. You know, we can get into that. You're hitting 3 to 4 lifting days a week. and it's all speed relative, right? Everything is. So it's either heavy and slow, or light and fast. Maybe some repetition method work in there. But you break your days up from upper body max effort and lower body max effort work. That looks like a push and a pull both ways, right? Lower and upper. And then the speed stuff. So doing dynamic effort stuff, moving the bar fast, maximal power output. So that's what I prescribe to. Happy to get into like the nuts and bolts on it. I also am a huge jiu-jitsu practitioner. Huge being is like, hey man, I'm crushing it, 4 or 5 days a week if I can. And so I'm using that to keep the skills sharp. And also it gives me that outlet to fight, right? And to fight for your life. And there's so many benefits there. How I plug rucking in once if you saw my stories today, I'm over 10,000 steps, and I was carrying my son and a ruck through Morocco today. So I'm rucking passively almost every day, right?
Okay.
But not like a 45-pound ruck every day for a 5-miler, right? That's a great recipe for disaster.
Right.
For most guys, I recommend one focused, really good ruck, but you should carry every day. Even in all of my training sessions, I'm a huge fan and a huge believer of weighted carries, whether it's suitcase carries, front rack carries, overhead carries. Carry something every day, and that's something I'm a huge believer in.
I'm 100%. I mean, just today, I joked a little bit. I wanted to go through a tough workout to earn the right to talk to you today. And, we capped off each round that we did with some heavy weighted carries, with some D-ball carries across the floor. And, there's a lot of farmers carry work and that kind of stuff. And so you're doing a dedicated gym training session, and then you're going on just more of a steady state passive ruck later in the day, or separate from that training? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, separate from the training.
Okay.
It'll be separated by at least 3 hours. Definitely a meal, hopefully a nap if I can. But I'm also like a huge fan of just getting steps in, and doing unweighted stuff as well, and tracking that. So another Michael Easter thing, he basically said that if you hit 15,000 steps a day, you're going to live forever. The Japanese figured that out. So I'm testing out that method right now. I'll let you know how that works out in 50 years.
Yeah. The challenge I just did, I asked everybody to get a minimum of 15,000 in every day. And that was very beneficial to everybody that was able to do that over the 33 days. And I got a lot of very positive input from that factor as well.
You have to be intentional, right? With that, to get 10,000, you can hit on it. I'm already at 10,000, and it was kind of accidental, but just normal pattern of life stuff. 15, you got to try. And I like that. But yeah, my rucking stuff, like pure rucking, probably once a week. That's how I schedule that in. And I want some time and space from my lifting. And I don't want to necessarily let that negatively impact my lifts either. So that's always the balancing act, right?
Right. See, what I'm doing, I do more of your typical hypertrophy training 3 to 4 days a week. And then we split that in the week, and we do more of a metabolic session like we did today. And then I'm doing a casual, just steady state ruck, probably about 3 to 4 days a week, because I just enjoy it. And then on one ruck each week, I'll do some training out on the course with the ruck. While I'm out on course, I'm going to do a quarter mile, then I'm going to do 15 ruck swings, then I'm going to do 10 walking lunges, I'm going to do an overhead carry, push-ups, whatever the case may be, and then do another quarter mile. So I might do that, for 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm doing that one day a week as well. And that combination is still giving me enough adequate recovery, and I'm still taking 2 full days off each week, and I just feel amazing. And, I mentioned a word in there that I think is, from the best I can tell, you are pretty thorough with in discussing, and that is the recovery element. So, what is your prescription, thoughts, ideology of rest, recovery, and getting the most out of your program through that?
Before we answer that, how heavy are you rucking on those 4 days a week? What's your normal
fo-
loadout?
45 to 60 pounds.
Oh man, that's awesome. You're stud.
No, no, that's you. I'm just trying to catch up for an old guy. But and the thing of it is, the thing of it is I've been, into bodybuilding and heavy lifting for 30 years. So for
Yeah.
me, the rucking and the changes that I've made in my programming is to make me a more complete athlete. I've never had a problem with strength, and I've never had a problem
Yeah.
pushing myself to do hard things with a lot of weight. So for now, me, it's more the conditioning element that I'm really having a
Gotcha.
lot of fun expanding now that I'm 54 years old. I want to be a badass when I'm 64 years old and 74 years old.
Sure.
So I think the addition of this has been very, very beneficial. But again, with that said, the recovery element is everything. That's when the magic happens. So, and people need to hear that
Absolutely.
more. People need to hear I preach it till I'm blue in the face. And that, I also talk about
Yep.
lifestyle modification, like the sunlight factor and the grounding and being outdoors, all the things that you discussed. But people
Hmm.
just, there's no excitement in the recovery part of it to people. So I think it gets discounted a
Yeah.
lot. And in our culture, it's about burning the candle at both ends, work, 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 and more is better, more is better. So I think hearing it from you with your amount of experience and being the badass that you are, talk a little bit about your ideology on recovery, its importance, and how you implement it.
All right. So first off, you're only recovering when you're sleeping,
Right.
and that's primordial, right? We have to dial in that sleep diet, right? And getting that correct is very important. Number one thing that leads into that, nutrition, cutting out the things that are limiting your sleep and recovery, because that's the only time you're making the gains.
Right.
And that I'm a firm believer in that. Plenty of studies to back me up there. So that's first and foremost. Now, the nutrition thing, hey, stop drinking as much alcohol, right?
Yep.
So if you're, and they did a study on guys, I was introduced, this is just another quote. It stuck with me since I was a young man, but if you drink like 3 drinks, which is, 3 little shots of liquor or 3 beers, you're stopping your HGH production for at least 2 days.
Right. Right.
That doesn't sound like a good thing, right? So yeah, you might feel a good buzz, you might feel great there, but there's other ways that are not necessarily negatively impacting your training and your recovery than tying on those couple of drinks. So for me, that's been a huge thing.
Right.
Past that, got to have adequate rest, listening to your body, and I'm a big fan of maintaining your machine. But it takes a while and some hard experiences, and sometimes it even takes pushing it too far to know how your body operates, right? How much food do you need? How much food do you not need, right? Getting your nutrition in check. And so experimenting with those things, and everybody's different. There are some set things that you say, hey, if I tell you to do this, this is going to work, right? But do a very strict diet and find out what you're allergic to, right? What's holding you back that you might currently be eating that can, you can just say, nah, that's not doing me any good. I'm gonna take that out of my fuel plan, and then you see everything go way better. For me, like the nutrition piece, I was super strict paleo for years, and I think what that did was set up my metabolic flexibility to be like locked in, right? And
Nice.
maybe
Nice.
maybe that's that whole locked in thing is a myth for myself, but by not being lazy with that, it basically said, hey, this is my standard, and then I can have some deviations. But if you set yourself, if you took a lot of time off or you fell off the bandwagon at some point, you're gonna have to get real strict with yourself to get back onto that before you can start treating yourself and eating for entertainment. So maybe living like a monk or a caveman is going to do you some good for a little while. And then the recoveries thing, like I got another acronym, CREAM, right? Cash rules everything around me. And you can put that to the Wu-Tang beat. But it's compression, rest, which is sleep, energy work, aqua and aminos, and then the mobile mindset. And so I'm a big fan of compression, whether it's voodoo floss or I love the intermittent ischemia, the pants, Normatec pants, stuff to get blood flowing,
Right.
and even as far as like wearing the undergarments, like the skins, I don't do that much as much anymore, but I do believe that it helped in a lot of the training that I did previously. Energy work, rest, you got to sleep, you got to take some time. If you injure yourself, take some time off, right? But not off completely, but focus on something different, right? And if you got a bum arm or a bum, I'm training a guy with a broke foot right now. Well, hey, he's doing a lot of single side stuff. He's taking this opportunity to get a yoked upper body,
Right.
even though he's got a broke foot. And all of those things are going to help him recover faster. The energy work, putting out positivity, getting good vibrations, and thinking about healing, right? If you just put that mind muscle connection into, I need to recover. I'm feeling this. I'm focusing on it. It's gonna recover faster. And then food and water, right? Aqua and aminos. Get it right. Make sure you're getting enough protein so you can refuel and grow from all the training that you're doing. And then the mobile mindset is like, even if you do have something go wrong, get active, break a sweat, find a way to do something so you don't end up static. And if you stay in one place for too long, you're just going to start molding and dying. And so that's kind of my recovery acronym. If you got an injury, it's worked for me. It's better than the whole RICE thing in my,
Right.
rest,
Right.
ice, compression, elevation, similar there. But just some mindset work and focusing on your diet, which people, it's not as sexy, but man, there's a lot sexy about a ribeye that can help you recover that is not like trash.
Right. Yeah, you're speaking to my crowd now.
Yeah, there you go, man. Let's do it.
Cigars and ribeyes, and the occasional glass of bourbon. I don't think you'd fault me for that one. I don't think.
No, and as long as you can handle yourself responsibly, but also responsibly in knowing how all of those inputs are affecting your machine. Is it holding you back? That's the question you got to ask yourself. And is it worth it to have that in? Like, does it taste that good, or can it just be coffee, or raw milk? Fuck, man. Like,
Oh yeah.
change it out. All of those things, everything has a factor, right? And everything has a cost. And so some people just can't handle their booze. For me, I know that all of my really bad decisions that I've made in my life can be tied to one thing.
Yeah.
Yep. And maybe that's true for a lot of guys. And as soon as I kind of made that switch mentally, it helped me out a lot.
Right. Yeah. I mentioned this challenge that I put a lot of my clients and social media followers through. And one of the conditions of that as well was no alcohol for 33 days. And I told you the most surprising element was the gravitation and the acceptance of the rucking element, which was really cool. And I'd have to say top of the list for everybody in that challenge. One of the things was no alcohol of any kind for 33 days. And the other thing was limiting time behind screens. So I said, for this 33 days, we're going to start easy. You can't be behind any kind of screen or any blue light stimulation a minimum of 1 hour before you go to bed. And again, when I get the feedback from these people, literally hundreds of people, it was decidedly so that the limitation of alcohol and the cessation of blue light stimulation was the two toughest things. It wasn't the training, it wasn't the diet, it was not looking at screens and the reduction of alcohol. And the other thing that ties into this that's just staggering, is in our culture today, young men, in their 20s and early 30s, their testosterone levels are the equivalent of what 70-year-olds were just 40, 50 years ago. So there's such a decline in the culture of, strength and honor, of, the things that make strong men and strong women who they are. And, it's these environmental toxins. It's this, the social media culture. It's all of that. I mean, how do you feel about that? Is it different where you are, or you see healthy doses of all this stuff? And, what's kind of your advice towards that?
No, it's worldwide, right? You can't get away from it. And all of those comforts are bad for you, right? And having your phone that accessible, having an app on your phone that can make everything that much easier, right? And yeah, like even down to your underwear that you're using, or these earbuds that I'm using, right? Like, are these doing something to my brain and affecting everything? It's surrounding us, and it's almost all consuming. And so I saw a thing the other day is like, what can you do to fight against that? Well, make conscious decisions against all of those things. And there's little things that you can do, like, hey, stop putting a bunch of shit soap on yourself, right? Stop lathering yourself in bad like sunscreen, right?
Yep.
Cover up with a rash guard and also like you're not going to get sunburned if you're not ingesting a bunch of high fructose corn syrup and
Exactly. Seed
fucking
oils. Seed oils.
like seed oils, right? So blow your mind on that, right? All of your diet stuff can be changed if you just fix these other little things. And so there's an antidote to all of this stuff. And changing just a little factor one at a time. Just pick one, right? Like
Yep.
maybe it's brushing your teeth with something different. Maybe it's not lathering on that soap. It's got an easy fix, right? Maybe it's not wearing polyester underwear, right? Maybe it's going free ball or like there's so many fixes for all of those things, but man, and even being in Africa or Europe, like it's the same everywhere because all of these things that make things easier are actually not good for us. And so fighting against that and being a rebel in all of those things. But like, my time in like survival schools, SEER school, where you're going in survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, right? Well, what's the number one thing if you get caught, if you get rolled up, like taking those little victories that say, fuck the man. And I'm gonna get this win because I can, right? Even if it's the smallest bit of rebellion, do that because it's a little win and those little wins stack. And so and I'm linked up with a great group of guys out here. Interestingly enough, like Islamic guys, but hey, the Muslim culture, they're very strict on a lot of things. And we get fed a bunch of shit in the American media that is confusing. And, since 9/11 or even as an operator, like you're told this about the savages, right? Well, these guys, man, hey, like, the serious guys, they're disciplined and how that can actually help with all your levels, right? Dudes out here are not the guys that are really disciplined. They're not struggling with the T, bro. They got 5 kids. Like
Right.
those infertility is not a thing if you're disciplined with those things.
Right.
You see the correlation that I'm making?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, man, cleaning up that, you just take one step at a time. So even if it's just removing one thing, maybe it's not the booze, maybe it's something else. But alcohol, I hit on that because it's close to home. I feel strongly about it, and it's the hardest thing to do, right? Changing somebody's diet's the hardest thing to do,
Right. 100%.
for sure. But if you can, I'm a extremist. So if I can go to the extreme and say, nope, I'm going to cut all that out. That's why paleo worked for me in the beginning, because I just say, I'm just not going to eat that food group. It doesn't belong in me.
Right.
And I think that's why it worked. And so I can do that. Other people, hey, well, you're going to struggle with your addiction and you should address that. And it'll make big things. Some people aren't ready to hear that. So focus on something different.
This is so cool, man, because, following you on the freaking internet, I was, to me, you were a guy that just trained in badassery. That's what you did. And now having this privilege of talking to you, man, you're just really speaking my language, because I love this talk of rebellion. And I didn't know that you were, on top of things like putting these environmental toxins on your skin and the cessation of these poisons and that whole, I love the word rebellion. And I'm sitting here, my wheels are turning. I'm thinking, okay, I got to have this guy on again. And I'm just going to say, remember when we talked about that rebellion that you talked about? Okay, well, let's talk about that. Go. And then see where just that shit goes, because it's exciting. And, I started, I did a traditional bodybuilding diet back in the 90s when I was steeped in that culture. And I knew something was off. I knew something was amiss. And that's when in 2004, I switched over to, at that time, what ended up being called a paleo diet or a primal diet. And it didn't even have a name at that time. I saw an obscure article in a magazine that a guy was calling it a caveman diet, but it made sense to me from an evolutionary biology standpoint, from a primal aspect of, just fueling your body properly and getting rid of the toxins. And then for me, that evolved into more of a even carnivore style diet, carnivore-ish. And that's a whole nother conversation, but it was all about just, the rebellion of staying away from the things that were affecting me negatively. And oftentimes it's not about what you do or what you eat. It's about what you don't do and what you don't eat and what you don't do to your body from all aspects. So, man, it's really freaking cool to hear you talk about that's sort of X factor stuff that a lot of people are just now really getting involved in. It's shocking to me how many people don't know that sunscreen is toxic, that don't know that
Yeah.
all these cosmetics and lotions and deodorants and fluoride toothpaste and not having a water filter in your home, how detrimental that can be to your health. So, man, hearing you talk about that, you went up a few more notches, and dude, you're definitely somebody I'm going to have to get back on. So, man, that's really freaking cool, dude.
So my buddy's out here, and I got linked up with a great group of guys. We actually started a little thing called Rebels with a Cause, and it's a small thing currently. We're just starting our own podcast. I've wanted to do it for years, but I've got to, it's growing this side. Podcasting isn't huge in Europe and Africa, but speaking French and Arabic as well, like we need to disseminate this information to other people, and it starts with rebelling against complacency and fixing yourself, fixing your fitness. And there's a lot of layers to the onion. Like I said, the cake, you gotta get into it. And the more you do, like you said, man, it's saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Or I'm going to take this other step. There's other choices, but the easy way always has negative side effects.
Yep.
And it's interesting. You said the standard bodybuilder thing. I was reading something about being full all the time, just constantly eating, right? Eating 5-6 meals a day.
Yep.
How that is actually detrimental to your recovery system, and it makes you age that much faster. And something that I'm about to launch with my guys is we're actually going to do it in congruence with Ramadan, which is the guys fast here for during the day, you eat at night. But we're going to do a 7-day fast, kind of a reset. And I got a guy that hit me up last week. He did my kettlebell program. He did great. He was like, what's my next step? I weigh 300 pounds. I'm trying to get down to 250. I said, hey, well, you got plenty. Have you ever done a fast? Let's do a 7-day fast. And he's on day 4 right now, and he's kicking ass. And so we're going to do a before and after, and then we're going to put together this whole thing together. But just back to the fasting thing is like being full all the time.
Yep.
Actually is negative for your longevity, and that like feeling hungry is so good for you.
100%.
We miss out on that. And so bringing that kind of mainstream as well, not overdoing it, because you will suffer some performance benefit, hey, you can't do as much, right? But I went hunting in Athens, Ohio this last trip right before we came back out here, and my mission was to only kill a doe because I wanted to fill the freezer. Well, only bucks walked in front of me, so I missed out on the hunt, and we went hungry. Luckily we could go to the store and get some good steaks and eat well, but shit happens, man. And like, you need to be able to go mentally. I talked to my wife about this all the time. She's like, I'm hungry. I got to eat. I got to do this. And I say, no, you don't have to do any of that shit. Like, you need to feel hungry at times. And I know that I'm way sharper if I'm right on the edge of hunger.
Yep.
So that's a big thing for us.
That is super interesting.
But
yeah, I mean, I did the 5-6 meals a day when I competed, and there's a place for that in physique competition, in that physique itself. I am not going to tell you it's healthy. I have said on many occasions, I did that to achieve a level of success in a competition. I didn't do that for health purposes. And when I made the decision to step away from that, the overriding reason was health and longevity. I had that time. I got the trophies. You can't take that away from me, but now it's time to focus on health and longevity. And now it's as simple as, I'm on a very, primal carnivore kind of a diet, and I feel extremely nourished, and I literally eat when I'm hungry, and that's it. And that for me equates into maybe 2 meals a day. And then I will try to incorporate a 24 to 36 hour fast. every couple of weeks, in addition to some of the intermittent fasting that I'm doing just by eating by satiety signals. And echoing what you said, some of the sharpest I feel mentally is, 30 hours into a 36-hour fast, or an hour 24 of a 24-hour fast. I feel mentally stimulated, and the hunger element goes away very, very quickly. And then, it's been a really, even though I've played with intermittent fasting in the past, now I feel far more intentional with it. And I'm really starting to see the things that I already knew would happen are happening. And it's been a really, really neat process. So once again, to hear you talking about that, and again, it's about doing hard things to achieve a greater benefit and a greater purpose, and to become better, top to bottom. And I think that's a huge element of it. So what are your views on cigar smoking?
Well, everything that I've read is it's increasing your testosterone, right? And
Exactly. We're going to go with that. We're going to go with that. And we're going to leave it at that, because believe it or not,
hey, everything has.
Go ahead.
Everything has its payout, right? And so, as nicotine being a nootropic, I'm getting dialed in. I'm focused, and also, like, you got to earn. Everybody's got their vice, right? But also earn your shit. So if you want something, like I set standards for myself. Hey, I need to train at least 4 hard sessions a week before I can earn it. And to, like, my buddy, I was out here, and we had a talk about Winston Churchill. So he brought me a Churchill, and I was like, that's awesome, right? So why not? But 2 dudes getting together, we're chatting about it, and to the diet thing, I'm on a very similar thing. Actually, 2 meals a day. I heard it first called the warrior diet by this OG operator on my second deployment to Afghanistan. He was like, yeah, nuts and meat, and I'm good twice a day. And I was like, whoa, man, that's pretty intense. Like, cool. And then Mark Sisson, actually, do you know Mark Sisson from Mark's Daily Apple?
Mark Sisson is what got me going primal in 2004. That he was the guy that started me on this journey.
Man. And I'm a big fan of, like, just shout out to guys that have influenced you over the years. That's one that I took a lot from, and his podcast with Joe Rogan. I didn't even know that because I kind of lost touch, but I listened to that podcast, and he was like, "Hey, yeah, 2 meals a day and fasting," and I was like, "Wow, well, this is what I'm already doing. Perfect. Glad this is working." But also, like, even getting into the bodybuilding thing, I've never done the bodybuilding thing. That my, like, aesthetic has always come form follows function. But then there's, like, the drugs that are not, hey, yeah, it's got an effect, and it's not necessarily great for you at some levels, but like, when you have to, not when you want to, but then, if that's your goal, like, that's involved. And it's part of it.
Right. 100%. Yeah. Sisson, Rob Wolf, these guys are the people that got me started. I actually had Rob Wolf on my show, several months ago, and he's just an incredibly cool guy and very, very accommodating. Nice. And so, yeah, I'm on the same page there. And bodybuilding, like I said, just to circle back to what you just said, it's, well, the drugs are in everything, unfortunately. And I've seen it in everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew that, of course, I've just competed, at the amateur level in the NPC, and I knew I had great genetics. It is what it is. I put on muscle easy, always did. And the fact that it all circles back to doing hard things. I knew that if I was going to compete just at the amateur level in the NPC, I would still be going up against guys who were sauced to the damn gills. So,
right.
So in my mind, it was like, that's fine. I'm going to just out fucking work everybody. And and I knew that the more conditioned you got and the leaner you got, it gave you a greater appearance of size and some symmetry and all that stuff. So my whole mindset was just suffer more, suffer harder, outwork everybody, and let the chips fall where they may, and just continue to do your homework. So yeah, it's everywhere. I mean, I know high-level CrossFitters that are sauced to the damn gills, and it's a shame, but it's something you can't get away from. I mean, that NFL running back that's trying to renew his contract. I have a good friend who played D1 college football at a high level at West Virginia. And he said on his first day on camp, they slid him a shoebox filled with vials. And he said, this is your protocol. This is what you need to take. If you have any questions, ask that guy. And he said, dude,
Mm.
everybody was on it. Everybody. He said, even the fucking kicker was on it. So I was like, all
Yeah.
right. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. So for
Interesting.
me, like you, it's about going the other direction, and what can I do to use this lifestyle to promote longevity and health and that sustainability.
Interestingly, like I didn't necessarily have that experience in the military. I know that now it well maybe in the 90s I just didn't have exposure to that as much. And not saying that it's not there, but that wasn't the crowds that I was running with. And then to quote Donnie Thompson, one of two guys to ever hit a 3,000 pound powerlifting total, like take drugs when you have to, not when you want to.
Right.
So, hey, if you have an injury, if something tragically goes wrong with you, okay, right? If you're doing everything right, you're getting your sleep, you're dialed in with your diet. But you need to at some point, I'm 35, right? When I'm getting some more gray in my beard like you, maybe that's an option. I'm not there yet, but for a lot of guys that I work with, like get your numbers checked out, see where you're at,
Yep.
and then dial in everything else before you start putting in a different kind of chemistry. So that's my take on that. And man, I appreciate your sentiment to it. Like work harder. At the same time, like you're a biology experiment, and we all have different stuff going on. So taking a look under the hood,
Oh
have
yeah.
somebody just do your blood work,
Yep.
get like a legit diagnosis so you can fix those little things. So plenty of assets available to you now that you can do that. For guys that I train, there are a lot of older guys as well. The GORUCK community, surprisingly, from my experience anyways, is like older guys that are doing these events and trying to figure out how to maintain their machine better.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you gotta address this because it's a thing, right? Father Time is not waiting for anybody here. And it's good to know what the deal is, right? And if you're not competing, like I don't want to compete against a guy in jiu-jitsu. Well, okay, take it 2016 in amateur strongman. You think those dudes aren't getting after it? Like,
Oh yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And I saw the writing on the wall there, because you only do that for so long before you tear a bicep or
Mm-hmm.
something, a muscle detaches from a tendon. What's that sound like, right? Same thing with baseball, right? Dudes blowing hamstrings or jujitsu, but get it as far as you can naturally, but also paying attention to what you got going on. I think that's very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I often say the most anabolic things you can do is food and sleep. I mean, if you
Mm.
nail your nutrition, if you nail your sleep, and then if you create the proper stimulus through the training, then, the magic happens when you feed it and when you let it rest. And a lot of people don't pay attention to that. And it's an epidemic. And that combined with the environmental toxins that we spoke of is, the aforementioned, 30-year-old guys have T levels, at 65. These are numbers that I see. I see guys in their
Mhm.
30s. The lowest that I've seen here in my gym is there was a guy that brought me his blood work. His testosterone was at 38. And he was a
Mm.
32-year-old guy. And so we went to work, and it was about just lifting heavy things, challenging himself in every way, and making sure he got adequate nutrition through healthy proteins and healthy fats that were going to support hormonal balance. And man, I drilled this guy all over the place about sleep. I want you getting 8-9 hours of restful sleep every night, no matter what. Stop the alcohol, stop the environmental toxins. And his testosterone levels boosted literally by hundreds of points within the first 8 or 9 months, I think it was. So,
Beautiful.
that's a good conversation and a good lesson for everybody to take heed. So I'm glad you mentioned all that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a taboo thing too. It's like, almost it doesn't get talked about enough, or dudes lying about it. Don't
Yeah.
fucking lie about it.
Right.
But
Right.
like address it where it needs to be and have a responsible discussion. And a lot of guys like draw the line at, hey, your sleep sucks, right? Your sleep and nutrition suck. So fix that first before you just start throwing down whatever extra stuff you're taking. But if you're not doing those things, you're gonna struggle with everything.
100%. I agree. Listen, I've
Mhm.
taken up too much of your time. We've been rocking with this for an hour and 15 minutes. So if you would honor me by maybe considering having you back on again in the future, I have
Hell
absolutely no
yeah.
doubt that my listeners are going to be stoked about this discussion. And man, I was a fan coming in, and now I'm even a bigger fan of the work that you're doing and what you've done and what you're throwing out there, man. It's some awesome shit, and man, it's
Thank
cool
you.
as hell. I appreciate you coming on, but I know you probably got shit to do, and I'm going to let you get to it. But where can people find you? What do you want people to know about you? And anything and everything you mentioned will definitely be in the show description below. So, how can we know more about you?
Well, so in the age of the digital nomad, I'm available all the time. Instagram is a great place. Send me a DM, send me a message, send me an email, ds@goruck.com. I respond to everything. I'm happy to answer questions. And well, like the one thing hopefully you got from this is I truly care about improving other people's lives through if I can give you a little of my experience and help you along, like that's my goal, is to positively impact others. I take that very seriously, whether it's GORUCK or people wanting to travel to Morocco and have a cool experience. That's what we're doing here. Riyadh la vie, the life, right? La vie, like say la vie. But you can live whatever life you want to have. You can have the adventurous life, the beautiful life, the chill life. But it's up to you, right? You gotta put yourself out there. And so my wife and I were out here. We're having a good time. Hit me up anytime. I'm happy to help anybody, and I'd love to continue the conversation with you anytime you want, man. I got hours. My little guy just woke up from a nap, so we're gonna go for a little night walk and get some great dinner. But I really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, again, the YouTube thing. You said that you just started it, and I was kicking myself yesterday actually, and I have been. I just started mine not too long ago. And just to put out those little weird things that you do, right? What do you value? What are these little things? I said, hey, what are the number 3 things you need to do for ripped abs? Well, what do I do consistently? Right.
Right.
That's training stuff, but it goes deep into diet. And so I needed a place for all of that stuff to live. You've done a fantastic job with editing, and man, like I'm gonna steal some stuff from you.
Please do.
Hope but man, like yeah, that's gonna continue to get built out over time. And man, just keep crushing it. Like we're out here.
Well, I've got another big challenge coming up for all of my listeners, and maybe you would honor me by designing a workout on one of those days that I can give you full credit for. That's just kick ass, so we can have a badass celebrity freaking trainer throw in something into the loop. So I'll hit you up about that though, because that would be super cool. It'll be Dan Skidmore
Hell
Day
yeah,
on our
absolutely.
66-day challenge. That'll come around and terrify the shit out of
Oh,
everybody.
brutal.
Hey, brother, again,
Well, and at the same time, we want to make it attainable, right? This
yeah,
has to be stuff.
yeah.
Nothing I'm doing is like crazy volume, right? And I want everybody to get a piece of it. And so you and we're not doing anything that nobody can do themselves or modify slightly and still get extreme benefits from it. So that's yeah. I'd love to be involved with that as well. Thank you for including me.
100%, man. Thank you so much. And I know everybody watching this is going to be stoked. So expect a few of those DMs coming. I'm sure you're going to get some from my crowd. So anyway, brother, I'll let you get to your walk, your time with your family. Thank you so much for being here. The honor and the privilege was mine. And we're definitely going to get you one in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, brother.